Good morning and welcome back to Cityline. With me, I have somebody who I feel like is everywhere in Tacoma in the sense of helping us understand our climate, helping us understand green spaces, and especially those big watery spaces. So it's no surprise that Leah Michaelson, who is the Community Relations Officer for the City of Tacoma, welcome to the comfy couch, by the way, is here to talk about turning the tide. And first off, if that phrase itself is just not enough to make you stop and go, yeah, turning the tide, that's a serious statement, requires some heavy thoughts and contemplation. But it's also the name of a film. So what is this film about? Is it about deep reflective thinking? Or is it about the actual tide that happens to be the Puget Sound?
You know, a little bit of both, Amanda. Right. Turning the Tide is an all-new feature-length documentary. It's produced by our Environmental Services Department right here at the City of Tacoma. It tells the story of this historic cleanup and revitalization of the Thea Foss Waterway right there in downtown Tacoma. But you know, it's more than just an environmental success story, for sure. It's a community success story. It's a story of a community and city leadership and leadership around the community coming together to address and solve a problem that ultimately, breathed new life into downtown Tacoma and our community.
I love that. So well said. Okay, so we have a clip. So we're going to run that clip here so we get a little snippet of what Turning the Tide is. So go right ahead, my wonderful people in the booth.
Well, in the 70s and 80s, the Thea Foss Waterway was an afterthought. It was an industrial dump.
The Thea Foss Waterway had the lowest water quality of any body of water in the state of Washington.
The best way I can describe the Foss Waterway as it existed is it was probably the largest septic tank I'd ever seen, and it really was the armpit of Tacoma.
It was absolutely necessary for the community to take control and see it through to its end.
Puyallup Indians lived here for thousands of years. Yet 100 years after rail came into Tacoma, we were declared a Superfund site. We managed to destroy this pristine environment in a little bit less than 100 years.
The city knew that they needed to redevelop the Foss Waterway, and they couldn't redevelop until they addressed the contamination.
The city council, mayor, and the administration stepped up. They bought the west side of the waterway from the railroad.
If the city wasn't willing to turn this property into useful property, nobody would.
We ended up paying $6.5 million. I would pay whatever to get a hold of that land because it was a once-in-a-century opportunity.
The city was taking on this major responsibility for the cleanup. I was worried, can they do this?
The Thea Foss Waterway is the story of resilience, vision, and initiative.
This is a story about a transformation of a city.
And so I think it is a redemption story.
It was a leap of faith.
Wow. Okay, so that begs the question. What is the environmental history of the Thea Foss, and what happened that it needed to be cleaned up? We got little teasers there, but if you're new to Tacoma, you're scratching your head right now.
Yeah, you know, it's more complex than we could cover in this segment, but in short, in the early 80s, the Thea Foss Waterway was deemed by the Environmental Protection Agency to be one of the most polluted, most contaminated sites in the entire country. For 100+ years leading up to that, toxic waste and contaminants from industry in the area was literally dumped right into the waterway with this mistaken understanding that the water somehow carried it just out of sight and out of mind. Right. And we know a little better now, right? We know that that's not how that works. And all of those contaminants and that toxic material was settling right into the waterway and creating this incredibly unhealthy, unsafe environment for any type of marine life, let alone humans, to exist and to coexist with the waterway in any kind of a healthy and safe way. So recognizing that in the early 90s, like you saw in the clip, the city purchased the west side of the waterway and led the effort in this massive development and environmental cleanup effort.
So Leah, in these times, oftentimes when we have an environmental crisis or we discover something, sometimes it falls under the radar. Sometimes we don't say anything about it, or we try to minimalize it. Why did Environmental Services decide to tell this story now?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the cleanup was officially considered complete way back in 2006, but the way we think of it at the city is that the work is not done. You know, the bulk of the cleanup effort may be complete, but the work continues today and will continue for decades to come. So recognizing that, this film actually came out of city leadership and city staff saying, this is an important story still to this day, and it's going to take a collective effort from not just city staff and leadership, but local organizations and community members to make sure that we don't ever even get close to going back to the environmental disaster that it was.
So speaking of that, you've got some people in this film that have a lot to say. They have seen what has happened. So who are some of the people that are featured in this film?
You know, you might have seen in the clip, but there's a lot of familiar faces to folks that have been around the Tacoma community. You know, we have city leadership, state leadership, local business leaders, business owners, environmental, nonprofit community leaders, historians, artists. I mean, we've just got such a wide diversity of experience and knowledge in this film represented, and we're really fortunate to have had a number of faces. And folks that watch the film, like I said, if you've been around Tacoma or even if you're new, you'll probably recognize a lot of the faces. But
oh my gosh.
You'll have to watch the film to see.
And also just some of the areas that those people are speaking from. Like I saw, you know, the LeMay Car Museum. I'm like, that's the LeMay that guy is behind right there. So speaking of all of those people in different walks of life, my brain goes, oh my gosh, how did you get all of them together to make this film, and how long did it take? We just had Council Member Daniels on the couch talking about that. Some projects 2 to 4 years until you even see just a little hint of progress. So spill it for us. How long has this been in the works?
I like to say that this story has been in development since the cleanup began, right? But if you want to talk technically about how long the film has been in production, it started back in 2018, 2019. Like so many things, it was delayed a number of times over the past couple of years. And, you know, we'd hoped to bring it to the Tacoma community to celebrate the 15th anniversary of this cleanup effort. And, you know, we're about 16 years out now, but that's still pretty good. And, you know, so I would say a few years, 2018, 2019 was the actual production of the film.
That is so impressive because, you know, as everything kind of came to a stop during the shelter in place, I mean, that's exactly what happens when you're filming a film like this and you have to go on site. It's like, I mean, some of those shots, the drone shots alone were beautiful. So speaking of that, tell us about this production company, because that is a gorgeous clip.
Thank you. Yeah, it was not me flying that drone.
Darn, not yet.
Not yet. No, we were really fortunate to work with Mark Wilkin and his production company, Kinetic Canvas. They're actually out of California, but Mark was, you know, wonderful of making numerous trips up here to Tacoma to conduct the interviews, get those shots. But I do want to also thank, you know, the production company themselves, but also city leadership. Big shout out to our Environmental Services Director, Mike Slevin. You know, he was instrumental in seeing this film get off the ground. And a big thank you to Mary Henley. She was one of the lead engineers on the project, and she's still with the Environmental Services Department. And she was just a really impactful and important part, not only of the project itself, but of seeing this film come to life.
I wonder if you share the experience I've had when I've been working on projects like this, and this is what I want to ask you. Sometimes I'll start out, and on my storyboard or on my project, I have an idea of who this project's audience is. And then as I start to get into the momentum and I start to see the end of it, and that there may be a bigger story to tell here, the audience for me changes. What is the intended audience for this film, and did you have that experience?
Absolutely. This film is for really anybody that lives, works, plays in, or loves Tacoma.
Yes.
It's both for those that maybe have been in Tacoma or in the area for decades and remember what the Theophos and downtown was like before this cleanup effort and have been around to see that transformation. But it's also for those like me. I mean, I moved to Tacoma 5 years ago. I wasn't around to experience and see firsthand what the Theophos was like before this cleanup effort. But in both cases, this film is meant for those that want or need to be inspired and informed about where we were, where we are today, and hopefully be inspired to foster change and be good stewards of this land and of this place going forward.
Absolutely. So when can we see the film? How do we get tickets? Will there be people there who are in the film to talk afterwards? Give us the whole 911, 211 of this.
Sure. At long last, we're pleased to be premiering the event at the Pantages Theater. What better place than downtown Tacoma to have the premiere event, right? So Thursday, September 22nd at 7 p.m., we're going to be premiering the film down at the Pantages. Doors will open at 6 for a reception. The film's at 7 o'clock, and it'll be followed by a panel discussion with local leaders and folks that were deeply involved in the project to talk about it.
And then once it's premiered, will it be on the TV Tacoma site? Will it be easy? Do we have access to sit down and watch it if we can't make that date?
Absolutely. So there's a couple of different opportunities. The week following, on Monday, September 26th and Wednesday, September 28th, it will be screening for free at the Grand Cinema. You can get your tickets right there at the Grand box office. Just walk up at showtime. So 7 p.m. for both of those dates. Tickets for the premiere event, I should mention, are available at our website, cityoftacoma.org/turningthetide. And then if you can't or choose not to attend either one of those, in probably mid-October, the film will absolutely be available here on TV Tacoma, I hope, and then also streaming for free online as well.
Leah, thank you for all that you have done and all of those that did this with you. And we'll see you at the Pantages.
Sounds good, Amanda. See you there.
We have much more to come on Cityline. Don't go away. We'll be right back.